What if you held in your hands a map that showed lands no longer found anywhere on Earth, places that vanished beneath the waves, were swallowed by shifting sands, or faded into legend so completely that we question if they ever existed at all? Ancient maps are far more than just guides for travelers. They're time capsules, preserving whispers of forgotten worlds that once thrived beyond the edges of our modern understanding. Think about that for a moment. These fragile pieces of parchment and faded ink hold clues to civilizations that rose and fell, continents that disappeared without a trace, and entire cultures that slipped through the cracks of history. From the mythical Atlantis, said to have sunk beneath the ocean in a single day and night, to the enigmatic Hyperborea, a paradise of eternal spring described by the Greeks but lost to time, these vanished lands haunt our collective imagination. Why do they fascinate us so deeply? Perhaps it's the thrill of the unknown, the tantalizing possibility that somewhere, buried in the shadows of history, lies a truth waiting to be uncovered. Or maybe it's the humbling reminder that even the mightiest empires and the most advanced societies can vanish, leaving behind only fragments of their existence. In this journey, we'll peel back the layers of these ancient maps, deciphering their symbols and stories to uncover what they reveal about the lands that slipped through history's grasp. We'll explore how cartographers of the past recorded places that no longer exist, whether through myth, misunderstanding, or genuine knowledge of lost territories. And along the way, we'll ask the bigger questions. What do these vanished lands tell us about humanity's relentless curiosity, our drive to explore, and our fear of being forgotten? This isn't just a tale of ink and paper. It's a window into the dreams, fears, and discoveries of those who came before us. So let's begin unraveling these mysteries together, one map at a time. The allure of these lost lands lies in their mystery, the way they hover between reality and legend, teasing us with the possibility that some kernel of truth might lie beneath centuries of myth. Take Thule, for example, a place described by ancient Greek explorers as the northernmost edge of the known world. Some scholars believe it could have been Iceland, Norway, or even a stretch of the Arctic now lost to time. But what's fascinating is how Thule appears not just in Greek texts, but in Roman accounts, medieval maps, and even Norse sagas. How could a single place weave its way through so many cultures unless it held some deeper significance? Then there's Lioness, the fabled land off the coast of Cornwall, said to have sunk beneath the waves in a single cataclysmic event. Local legends describe it as a prosperous kingdom, its church bells still ringing beneath the sea on stormy nights. But here's the twist: geologists have found evidence of submerged forests in the area, suggesting that parts of the coastline really did vanish beneath rising waters. Could Lioness have been a real place, its fate exaggerated into myth over time? And who could forget Hy-Brasil, the phantom island that appeared on maps for hundreds of years, always just out of reach? Sailors reported glimpsing it through the mist, only for it to vanish when they drew near. Some say it was a trick of the light, others that it was a mirage, but could it have been a real landmass, perhaps one that eroded or sank? The persistence of these stories across centuries suggests something more than mere imagination at work. What ties all these lost lands together is the way they challenge our assumptions about history. If ancient cartographers included places we can't find today, were they recording real geography that's since disappeared, or were they mapping the edges of human knowledge, filling in blanks with legend? Either way, these maps force us to reconsider what we think we know. They remind us that history isn't just a fixed record, but a puzzle with missing pieces, waiting for the right clue to bring them back to light. Claudius Ptolemy wasn't just a mapmaker, he was a visionary whose work became the bedrock of cartography for centuries. Picture this: in the 2nd century, when much of the world remained uncharted, Ptolemy sat in Alexandria, plotting coordinates for lands he'd never seen, relying on travelers' tales and mathematical calculations. His masterpiece, Geography, wasn't just a collection of maps. It was a revolutionary system that laid the groundwork for how we visualize space even today. But here's where it gets intriguing. Among the accurately placed lands like Taprobane, now known as Sri Lanka, Ptolemy included places that defy modern identification, like the enigmatic Island of the Blessed. Was this a real place lost to time, or a mythical paradise woven into the fabric of his maps? Consider terra incognita, the blank spaces on Ptolemy's maps labeled unknown lands. These weren't just omissions, they were invitations, daring future explorers to fill in the gaps. And yet, some of his known lands now seem to belong to the realm of legend. Take the case of the Golden Chersonese, a fabled peninsula rich in gold, often linked to Southeast Asia. Modern scholars still debate whether it was a misidentified location or a land that literally vanished, swallowed by rising seas or eroded by time. The ambiguity is what makes Ptolemy's work so compelling. His maps weren't just scientific documents, they were hybrids of observation and imagination, reflecting the limits and the audacity of ancient knowledge. What's even more remarkable is how Ptolemy's errors revealed deeper truths. When he placed the Indian Ocean as a landlocked sea, or stretched Asia too far eastward, he wasn't being careless. He was piecing together a puzzle with missing fragments, relying on second-hand accounts and the biases of his sources. This blending of fact and folklore raises a haunting question: how many of his lost lands were pure myth, and how many were real places erased by natural disasters or human error? For instance, the vanishing of Doggerland, a once thriving landscape now submerged beneath the North Sea, proves that entire regions can disappear from maps and memory. Could Ptolemy have recorded similar lost worlds without realizing their fleeting existence? Ptolemy's legacy isn't just in the accuracy of his maps, but in their enduring mystery. His work reminds us that every map is a snapshot of a moment in time, shaped by the knowledge and the gaps of its era. As we trace his coordinates today, we're not just following ancient lines on parchment. We're retracing the footsteps of a thinker who dared to chart the unknown, leaving behind clues to lands that might still be waiting to be rediscovered. The Vinland Map sits at the heart of one of cartography's most heated debates, a fragile parchment that could rewrite history. Discovered in the 1950s, this artifact appears to show the northeastern coast of North America, labeled clearly as Vinland, nestled among the familiar outlines of Europe and Greenland. What makes it so extraordinary is its date. If genuine, the map would have been drawn in the 1400s, decades before Columbus ever set sail. That single sheet of vellum suggests Norse explorers not only reached the New World but documented it for others to follow. But here's where the mystery deepens. The Vinland Map's authenticity has been fiercely contested. Skeptics point to inconsistencies in the ink, arguing it contains a modern compound called anatase, which wouldn't have been used in medieval times. Others counter that the map's wormholes align perfectly with known 15th century books, hinting it could be part of a larger, genuine volume. Even the handwriting has been scrutinized. Some scholars see the elegant script as typical of the era, while others detect subtle anomalies. What's undeniable is the map's tantalizing connection to real history. Viking sagas speak of Leif Eriksson's journey to a land he called Vinland around the year 1000, a place of wild grapes and fertile shores. Archaeological evidence at Elands Ox Meadows in Newfoundland proves Norse settlers briefly lived there. So if the sagas were true and the settlement was real, why wouldn't at least one map maker have recorded it? The Vinland Map could be that missing link, a fragile echo of knowledge passed down through generations of sailors and scholars. Yet the debate isn't just about ink and parchment. It's about how history gets preserved and who gets credit. For centuries, Columbus was celebrated as the discoverer of the Americas. But if the Vinland Map is authentic, it shatters that narrative. It forces us to ask, how many other maps might have existed, documenting lands and voyages lost to time? And if this one is a forgery, why would someone go to such lengths to fabricate a story that the Vikings got there first? Whether medieval masterpiece or elaborate hoax, the Vinland Map captures something profound about human curiosity. It's a testament to our hunger to explore, to document, and sometimes to deceive. Even if science never reaches a definitive verdict, the map's very existence keeps the past alive, inviting us to question what we think we know. After all, history isn't just written by the winners, it's drawn by the mapmakers, and sometimes their lines blur the boundary between fact and legend. The Piri Reis Map doesn't just challenge our understanding of history, it shatters it. Imagine a world where Antarctica, now buried under miles of ice, was once a land of exposed coastlines and navigable shores. That's exactly what this enigmatic map, drawn in 1513 by the Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, seems to depict. The southern continent appears with shocking precision, its contours matching modern satellite surveys of the land beneath the ice. But here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and its ice cap formed millions of years ago. So how could a 16th century cartographer have known what lay hidden beneath millennia of frost? One theory suggests Piri Reis copied his work from much older sources, perhaps maps passed down from a forgotten civilization that thrived before the ice took hold. Ancient scholars like Ptolemy wrote of a vast southern landmass, and legends from multiple cultures speak of advanced seafarers who charted the globe long before recorded history. Could fragments of their knowledge have survived, tucked away in libraries or traded along Silk roads, only to resurface in the hands of an Ottoman admiral? Skeptics, of course, have another take. They argue the Antarctica on the map might just be a distorted version of South America, which Piri Reis accurately depicted elsewhere. The human mind excels at finding patterns, even where none exist, so what we see as Antarctica could simply be a cartographer's best guess, warped by limited data. Yet the map's defenders counter with a striking detail. The coastline labeled as Antarctica includes features like the Queen Maud Land, which wouldn't be visible again until radar technology pierced the ice in the 20th century. That's either an uncanny coincidence or evidence of lost knowledge. Then there's the mystery of the map's creation. Piri Reis himself wrote that he compiled it from 20 older sources, including charts used by Christopher Columbus. Some of those sources, he claimed, dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. If true, it means the map could be a patchwork of ancient and medieval geography, preserving glimpses of a world much older than we realize. But without those original documents, we're left with tantalizing questions. Did earlier civilizations possess tools or techniques to map lands we consider uncharted? And if so, what happened to them? The debate over the Piri Reis map isn't just about ink and parchment. It's about rewriting the timeline of human exploration. If Antarctica was indeed ice-free when these maps were first drawn, it upends everything we know about climate history and ancient seafaring. But if it's a mirage, a trick of projection and wishful thinking, then why does it haunt us so deeply? Perhaps because, like all great mysteries, it forces us to confront the gaps in our knowledge. Every line on that faded parchment whispers the same unsettling question: how much of the past have we truly lost? Plato's account of Atlantis isn't just a story, it's a riddle wrapped in a disaster, one that's haunted scholars and explorers for over 2,000 years. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he describes a mighty island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, richer and more advanced than any civilization of its time. Its people built concentric rings of canals and glittering temples, only to anger the gods and vanish beneath the waves in a single catastrophic day and night. But here's the twist: Plato insists this wasn't myth. He claims the tale came from Egyptian priests who said it happened 9,000 years before his own era. So was Atlantis real, or was it a cautionary fable about hubris, lost in translation across centuries? The absence of Atlantis on ancient maps only deepens the mystery. You'd expect a civilization that grand to leave traces in early geography, yet no known Greek or Roman charts label it. That changes in the Middle Ages when scholars like Athanasius Kircher boldly placed Atlantis in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. His 1665 map, Mundus Subterraneus, shows the lost continent as a sprawling landmass between Europe and the Americas, complete with volcanoes and rivers. Was this creative license, or did Kircher have access to forgotten sources? The irony is striking. A medieval scholar working millennia after Plato might hold the closest thing to a map of Atlantis we'll ever see. Modern theories split into two camps. Some argue Atlantis was allegory, a literary device Plato used to critique Athenian society. Others chase physical evidence, linking it to real-world disasters. The most compelling candidate, the Minoan civilization on Crete, obliterated around 1600 BC by the eruption of Thera. The parallels are eerie: a sophisticated sea power, advanced architecture, and a sudden collapse from tsunamis and ash. But Thera's destruction happened 1,000 years after Plato's claimed timeline, so could the Egyptian priests have garbled the dates? Or was Plato blending multiple cataclysms into one moral lesson? Then there's the wild card, the Doggerland theory. Beneath the North Sea lies a submerged landscape once home to Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. When rising seas drowned it around 6200 BC, did survivors carry tales of a lost land westward, where they morphed into the Atlantis legend? It's a stretch, but not impossible. After all, oral traditions can warp over millennia, turning real events into mythic archetypes. The search for Atlantis reveals less about the past than it does about us. Every era projects its fears and fantasies onto Plato's story, whether it's Victorian occultists imagining advanced technology or modern scientists probing for sunken cities. Maps, in this sense, are mirrors. They reflect not just geography, but the obsessions of the people who drew them. Kircher's Atlantis isn't merely a place. It's a Renaissance dream of discovery, a blank space on the page whispering, "What if?" And that's the enduring power of Atlantis. It's not just a lost continent, it's the ultimate blank canvas, waiting for each generation to sketch its own version of Paradise Lost. Hyperborea lingers in the ancient imagination like a dream of perpetual sunlight, a land so perfect it feels almost too good to be real. Greek poets like Pindar described it as a place beyond the reach of winter, where the sun never set and the people lived in unbroken harmony, untouched by disease or old age. But what's striking is how this mythical paradise didn't just stay confined to legend. Medieval mapmakers, from the Hereford Mapa Mundi to Gerardus Mercator, placed Hyperborea firmly in the Arctic, sketching it as a circular continent divided by rushing rivers, bathed in eternal daylight. How did a poetic ideal become a cartographic certainty? One theory ties Hyperborea to real-world geography. the Greeks knew of Scandinavia through amber trade routes, and tales of the midnight sun could have morphed into legends of a land without darkness. The Sami people of northern Europe, with their reindeer herds and shamanic traditions, might have seemed like the godlike Hyperboreans to outsiders. But here's the twist: some ancient texts claim Hyperborea wasn't just a place, but a people, a race of giants or demigods who sent gifts to Delphi wrapped in wheat straw. That detail hints at something deeper than a mistranslated travelogue. Could this be a fragmented memory of a lost culture, one that thrived before the ice advanced? Then there's the polar civilization theory. 19th century mystics like Helena Blavatsky claimed Hyperborea was the homeland of an advanced Aryan race, later adopted by fringe groups seeking mythical roots. But even without the pseudoscience, the idea resonates. Geological evidence shows the Arctic wasn't always frozen. During the last interglacial period, parts of it were temperate. If humans lived there, their stories could have survived in myth long after the cold erased their homes. The Kola Peninsula in Russia, for instance, holds megaliths some believe predate known civilizations. Are these the ruins of Hyperborea, or just another case of seeing what we want to see? Mercator's famous 1694 map adds another layer. He depicted Hyperborea as 4 islands surrounding a polar whirlpool, eerily mirroring modern satellite views of Arctic currents. Was this a lucky guess, or did he have access to forgotten knowledge? The map claims to use accounts from a 14th century knight's journey, but no such records survive. It's as if Hyperborea exists in the gaps between myth and map, between what we know and what we long to believe. Perhaps Hyperborea's power lies in its duality. It's both a real place we might one day pinpoint a distorted memory of Scandinavia or a sunken Arctic land, and a metaphor for the human desire to imagine a world without suffering. Every culture has its golden age or Eden, a time before the fall. Hyperborea is the Greek version of that longing, projected onto the blank spaces of their maps. And in that sense, it's never truly lost. It's wherever we dare to dream of something better, just beyond the north wind. Lemuria might be the most fascinating case of a lost land that began as science and slipped into myth. In the 1860s, geologists puzzled over a strange puzzle fossils of lemurs, small primates, found in both India and Madagascar, separated by thousands of miles of ocean. To explain this, scientists like Philip Sclater proposed a sunken continent they called Lemuria, a vast land bridge that once connected these regions before vanishing beneath the Indian Ocean. It was a perfectly reasonable theory for its time, born from the limitations of 19th century geology. But then something unexpected happened. The idea of Lemuria didn't just stay in textbooks, it took on a life of its own. By the early 20th century, esoteric thinkers like Helena Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society transformed it into a spiritual homeland, a paradise of ancient wisdom where a race of enlightened beings supposedly thrived. Suddenly, Lemuria wasn't just a geological hypothesis. It became a lost utopia, a Pacific counterpart to Atlantis, complete with crystal cities and advanced civilizations. How did a scientific theory morph into such an elaborate legend? Plate tectonics eventually debunked the original Lemuria concept, proving that Madagascar and India were once part of the same landmass, not because of a sunken continent, but because of the slow drift of Earth's crust. Yet the myth refused to die. Even today, you'll find maps and stories that keep Lemuria alive, often placing it near the mysterious submerged landmass known as Kumari Kandam in Tamil folklore. This sunken kingdom, said to have been home to an ancient Tamil civilization before the ocean claimed it, shares eerie similarities with the Lemuria legend. Could there be a kernel of truth buried beneath the layers of myth? Some researchers think so. They point to real submerged landforms like the sunken microcontinent known as Mauritius, fragments of which lie beneath the Indian Ocean. Others suggest that Lemuria's persistence in culture reflects a deep human instinct, a way to make sense of catastrophic events like rising sea levels that reshaped coastlines and erased entire settlements. After all, oral traditions from Australia to the Mediterranean speak of great floods and lost lands. Could Lemuria be one more echo of these shared memories? What's most compelling about Lemuria isn't whether it existed, but what its story reveals about us. It's a mirror of how science and myth intertwine, how gaps in knowledge become canvases for imagination. Even when facts overtake a theory, the stories we build around it linger, shifting shape but never quite disappearing. Lemuria reminds us that every map, whether drawn by a geologist or a mystic, is as much about the people who made it as the land it depicts. And sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't the ones we solve, but the ones that keep us searching. The Hereford Mapa Mundi isn't just a map, it's a portal into the medieval mind, where geography and faith collide in a breathtaking tapestry of ink and vellum. Created around 1300, this massive work, over 5 feet tall, stretches far beyond mere cartography. Jerusalem sits at its heart, not as a city, but as the spiritual center of the world, while the edges bristle with monstrous creatures and lost realms. It's a world where Gog and Magog, those legendary forces of chaos from biblical prophecy, are literally penned in by Alexander the Great's mythical gates, waiting to break free at the end of days. This wasn't a tool for sailors or merchants. It was a sermon in parchment form, teaching viewers that every place, real or imagined, held a moral lesson. What's striking is how the map blends the tangible with the fantastical. Alongside real cities like Rome and Paris, you'll find the Tower of Babel crumbling in the east, its bricks scattered by divine wrath, and Eden itself, lush and untouchable, guarded by a fiery sword. These weren't just decorative flourishes, they were reminders that history and myth shared the same stage. Take the monstrous races sketched at the margins, dog-headed men, one-footed giants, and beings who shaded themselves with their own enormous ears. To modern eyes, they seem like whimsy, but to medieval viewers, they were real. These creatures populated the edges of known travelogues, like the accounts of Marco Polo or John Mandeville, proof that the world was stranger than anyone could fathom. But the map's true power lies in its lost lands, places like the realm of Prester John, a Christian king said to rule a paradise of rubies and unicorns beyond the Islamic world. Or the Red Jews, a mythical tribe believed to be trapped behind mountains, destined to unleash havoc during the apocalypse. These weren't just stories, they were warnings and hopes woven into geography. When the map shows the 10 lost tribes of Israel exiled beyond a river of sand, it's not charting a real migration, it's mapping faith itself, turning belief into lines on a page. The Hereford Mapa Mundi forces us to ask, what makes a place real? To its creators, Gog and Magog were as factual as France, because myth shaped their understanding of the world as much as trade routes or pilgrimage roads. In an era before satellites, maps were less about accuracy than meaning. A city's size on the parchment reflected its spiritual importance, not its population. Rivers might curve to frame a saint's miracle, and oceans teem with sea monsters to humble proud sailors. This wasn't ignorance, it was a different way of knowing, where every line carried the weight of scripture and legend. Today, we smile at the idea of dog-headed men or Eden's precise coordinates, but we still fill our own maps with symbols, national borders, disaster zones, even the "here be dragons" of uncharted data in digital spaces. They all reveal what we value and fear. The Hereford Mapa Mundi's vanished lands remind us that every era has its edges, places where knowledge fades into mystery, And perhaps that's the map's greatest lesson. The world is always vaster and stranger than our charts can capture. The monsters at the edges, they're never really gone. They just take new shapes, waiting for the next cartographer to give them form. The Zeno map is one of history's most stubborn cartographic ghosts, a sheet of parchment that convinced generations of sailors to chase a land that never was. Created in the 1560s by Niccolò Zeno, a Venetian nobleman, it claimed to be based on voyages by his ancestors 2 centuries earlier. At first glance, the map seems meticulous, with its jagged coastlines and carefully labeled islands. But one landmass stands out, Friesland, a sprawling island just southeast of Iceland, drawn with such confidence that it appears as real as England or Scandinavia. For over 100 years, navigators included Friesland on their charts, and explorers risked their lives to find it. Yet no such place existed. So how did an entire island vanish from the maps, or more accurately, how did it never exist in the first place? One theory points to a simple case of mistaken identity. Some historians argue that Friesland might have been a misrecorded sighting of Greenland's eastern coast, distorted by fog, ice, or the limitations of early navigation. Greenland's real geography was poorly understood at the time, and its icy fjords could easily have been misinterpreted as a separate landmass. But here's where the story gets complicated. The Zeno map doesn't just place Friesland near Greenland, it gives it villages, kings, and even a detailed history, claiming the Zeno brothers were shipwrecked there and served a local ruler named Zichmni. These vivid details suggest more than a navigational error. They hint at deliberate embellishment, a tale spun to glorify the Zeno family's legacy. Then there's the possibility of intentional deception. The 16th century was a golden age of exploration, and maps were lucrative commodities. A newly discovered island could boost a cartographer's reputation, or even secure royal funding for future voyages. Was Friesland a fabrication, a way to sell more maps or attract patrons? The timing is suspicious. Niccolò Zeno published his map just as European powers were scrambling to claim uncharted territories. A phantom island, conveniently placed along busy northern trade routes, would have been irresistible to adventurers and investors alike. But Friesland's legacy outlasted its debunking. Well into the 1700s, maps still occasionally featured the island, a stubborn relic of earlier eras. Even respected cartographers like Gerardus Mercator initially included it in their atlases, proving how easily myths could harden into fact. The real lesson of Friesland isn't just about a fake island, it's about the power of maps to shape reality. For centuries, sailors swore they'd glimpsed Friesland through the mist, their minds conditioned by the maps they trusted. It's a reminder that every chart is part science, part story, and sometimes the stories we tell about the world can be as compelling as the truth. What makes the Zeno map so fascinating isn't its inaccuracy, but its influence. Friesland may have been a cartographic mirage, but the search for it drove real voyages, real discoveries, and even real tragedies. In the end, the map's greatest trick wasn't fooling explorers. It was revealing how easily we confuse the lines on a page with the world itself. Every lost land, whether real or imagined, leaves a mark on history, and sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't the ones we solve, but the ones we keep chasing, long after the maps have been corrected. Terra Australis was the ultimate cartographic mirage, a colossal southern continent born from logic, not exploration. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle believed symmetry governed the world, arguing that the weight of northern lands must be balanced by an equal mass in the south. Ptolemy took this idea further, sketching a vast, unknown land encircling the Indian Ocean, labeling it simply Terra Incognita. Over centuries, that blank space evolved into Terra Australis, a place of imagined riches and temperate shores, drawn with increasing confidence on maps despite no sailor ever setting foot there. What's fascinating is how this phantom land refused to fade, even as explorers chipped away at its edges. Take Abraham Ortelius's famous 1570 world map, where Terra Australis sprawls across the bottom of the globe, connected to both South America and New Guinea. Ortelius wasn't just guessing, he was stitching together whispers from Portuguese and Spanish voyages, fragments of coastlines that might have been Patagonia, or even early sightings of Australia. But here's the twist. His map also shows a clear passage south of Tierra del Fuego, hinting that Terra Australis might be separate from the Americas. Was this intuition, or did Ortelius have access to lost accounts of southern waters? The myth began to unravel with James Cook's voyages in the late 1700s. Sailing further south than any European before him, Cook found not a lush continent, but an icy wasteland Antarctica. Yet even then, the dream of Terra Australis didn't die quietly. Some argued Cook had merely missed the real southern land, hidden beyond the ice. Others, like the French explorer Jean-François de Galaup, Comte de la Pérouse, kept searching for it until his ships vanished in the Pacific. The persistence of this idea reveals something profound. Maps aren't just records of what we know, they're battlegrounds between observation and imagination. Could Terra Australis have been a garbled memory of real lands? Some scholars think so. When the Dutch first charted Australia in the 1600s, they initially called it New Holland, part of the imagined southern continent. Aboriginal oral histories, stretching back tens of thousands of years, describe landscapes that align with now submerged coastlines, suggesting humans might have known these lands long before Europeans. Even early Chinese and Arab maps hint at southern territories, though whether they depict Australia, Antarctica, or pure myth remains hotly debated. The legacy of Terra Australis isn't just a story of errors. It's a testament to how deeply humans crave balance, both in geography and in thought. For millennia, symmetry felt like a law of nature, and cartographers bent their maps to fit that ideal. When reality refused to comply, the myth simply adapted, shrinking from a continent to an island, then to a scattering of uncertain coastlines. In the end, Terra Australis didn't vanish because it was disproven. It vanished because we no longer needed it to make sense of the world. Yet its ghost lingers in every blank space on a map, reminding us that the line between discovery and invention is often thinner than the parchment it's drawn on. Catalan Atlas isn't just a map. It's a shimmering window into a world where gold caravans crossed deserts and whispered legends lured kings to their doom. Crafted in 1375 by the Jewish cartographer Abraham Cresques, this masterpiece of medieval navigation stitches together the known and the imagined with breathtaking detail. Stretching from the Atlantic to China, it charts the bustling trade routes of the 14th century, where spices, silk, and gold flowed like water. But woven between the real ports and markets are places that defy logic, kingdoms of myth, cities of fable, and one name that haunted explorers for centuries, Prester John. This legendary Christian ruler was said to command a realm of untold wealth and piety somewhere beyond the Islamic world, possibly in Africa or Asia. The Catalan Atlas places him squarely in Ethiopia, surrounded by rivers of gold and towers of rubies. For generations, his kingdom became an obsession. Monarchs from Portugal to Rome launched expeditions to find him, hoping for an ally against their enemies. The irony, Prester John's realm was almost certainly a tapestry of rumors, fragments of real Ethiopian Christianity blended with travelers' tall tales. Yet the Atlas treats his domain as fact, a reminder that even the most meticulous maps could blur the line between report and romance. But the true power of the Catalan Atlas lies in its ghosts, the real cities it captures at their zenith, just before they vanished into dust. Take Timbuktu, depicted here as a golden hub of learning and trade, its streets lined with scholars and its markets heavy with Saharan gold. By the time European explorers reached it centuries later, its glory had faded, its libraries crumbling and its wealth scattered. The Atlas freezes Timbuktu in its prime, preserving a snapshot of a place that would soon slip into legend. The same goes for cities like Sijilmassa, a desert metropolis that controlled trans-Saharan trade until drought and war erased it from the map. These weren't mythical lands, they were thriving centers of culture, lost to time's cruel march. What makes the Catalan Atlas so poignant is its duality. It's both a practical tool and a work of wishful thinking, documenting real commerce while feeding dreams of uncharted wonders. The ships it paints sailing off the edge of Africa aren't just vessels, they're symbols of human ambition, pushing beyond the known world. And the phantom kingdoms, they reveal a deeper truth. Maps don't just show us where we are, they show us where we long to go. Every line on Cresk's parchment whispers the same tantalizing question. What if the next voyage, the next turn of the road, leads not to the expected, but to the extraordinary? The Atlas also hints at a darker side of cartography. Some of its lost cities didn't vanish naturally, they were destroyed. The Mali Empire's decline, hastened by invasions and shifting trade routes, turned bustling hubs like Gao into shadows. The map captures these places in their twilight, unaware of their coming fate. It's a sobering thought. Civilizations that seem eternal can crumble, their memory kept alive only by ink and vellum. Perhaps that's why the Catalan Atlas endures. It's not just a guide to the past, it's a mirror. In its blend of fact and fantasy, we see our own world reflected. How many of our modern maps, with their satellite precision, still harbor gaps and guesses? How many places do we label with confidence today that might baffle future historians? The Atlas reminds us that every map is a product of its time, shaped by the knowledge, hopes, and blind spots of the people who made it. And sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't the lands we've lost, but the stories we've convinced ourselves are true. Brendan's Island is one of those tantalizing mysteries where faith and geography blur into legend. According to medieval lore, the 6th century Irish monk Saint Brendan the Navigator set sail across the Atlantic with a band of followers, seeking a promised land of wonders. His fantastical voyage, filled with encounters with giant crystal pillars and floating islands, was preserved in the Navigatio Sancti Brendani, a text that mixed scripture with seafaring. But what's striking isn't just the story, it's how stubbornly the island named for him clung to maps for nearly 1,000 years. From the 1300s onward, cartographers like Martin Behaim and Abraham Ortelius drew Insula Sancti Brendani west of the Canary Islands, a fixed point in the rolling uncertainty of the Atlantic. Sailors swore they glimpsed it, a hazy outline on the horizon, lush and inviting only for it to dissolve into mist as they neared. Was this mass hallucination a trick of light refracting off the ocean? Or could it have been a real landmass like one of the Azores, misidentified and mythologized over centuries? The Azores' volcanic peaks, often shrouded in fog, might explain the fleeting sightings, yet the island's coordinates shifted with every map as if it were drifting just out of reach. The enduring power of Brendan's tale lies in its ability to inspire real exploration. Christopher Columbus himself studied the Navigatio before his 1492 voyage, jotting notes about St. Brendan's journey in the margins of his books. To him, the monk's story wasn't just allegory, it was proof that the Atlantic could be crossed, and he wasn't alone. Portuguese explorers scoured the ocean for the island well into the 1600s, their charts marking it long after other phantom lands had been erased. What's fascinating is how the legend evolved. In some versions, Brendan's Island was a paradise where time stood still, a Celtic Eden untouched by decay. In others, it was a mirage, a test of faith for those who sought it too greedily. That duality captures something essential about lost lands. They're never just places. They're mirrors for our desires, whether for discovery, salvation, or simply the thrill of the unknown. Brendan's Island may have faded from maps, but its legacy didn't. Modern scholars have even attempted to retrace the monk's route, suggesting he might have reached Newfoundland or the Faroe Islands. Whether fact or fable, the story reveals a deeper truth. Sometimes the most enduring discoveries aren't the ones we make with ships and compasses, but the ones we carry in our imaginations, guiding us toward horizons we've yet to chart. Antillia is the kind of legend that makes you question where myth ends and history begins. Portuguese sailors in the 1400s spoke of a vast island in the Atlantic, a place where 7 Visigothic bishops supposedly fled during the Moorish conquest of Iberia in the 8th century. According to the tale, these bishops built 7 golden cities, each more magnificent than the last, creating a Christian utopia hidden in the mist. But here's where it gets intriguing. Antillia wasn't just a fireside story. It appeared on maps for centuries, drawn with startling precision, its outline taunting explorers who couldn't decide if it was a navigational landmark or a cartographic ghost. The name itself lingers like a whisper. Some scholars argue it's the root of Antilles, the modern term for the Caribbean archipelago. Could Antillia have been a misremembered version of Cuba or Hispaniola, distorted by generations of retelling? Others point to the Azores, where strange underwater formations hint at lands that might have once been above water. The island's coordinates shifted over time, drifting westward on charts as explorers failed to find it, a phantom retreating just beyond the horizon. What's fascinating is how seriously Antillia was taken. In 1487, King John II of Portugal even issued a grant to a Fleming named Ferdinand van Oom, giving him the right to colonize Antillia if he could find it. Think about that, a monarch staking claim to a land no one could prove existed. The island became such a fixture of maritime lore that Christopher Columbus allegedly adjusted his course based on rumors of its location, wondering if the lush coasts he encountered in the Caribbean were the fabled cities at last. But Antillia's legacy isn't just about mistaken geography. It's a window into the psychology of exploration. For sailors braving the unknown, the idea of a lost Christian kingdom wasn't just comforting, it was motivational. Antillia embodied hope, a symbol that even in the vast, uncharted ocean, there were places of refuge and riches waiting to be rediscovered. The 7 cities might never have existed, but the quest for them drove real voyages, real discoveries, and real consequences. And then there's the eerie possibility that Antillia was more than a mirage. In the Azores, archaeologists have found strange stone structures and carvings that don't match known Portuguese settlements. Could these be echoes of an earlier, forgotten presence? Or are we, like those medieval mapmakers, seeing what we want to see? Antillia's greatest trick is the way it straddles the line between fact and fiction, reminding us that sometimes the most enduring legends aren't those that get debunked, but those that keep us searching. Deep in the heart of the Sahara, where the dunes stretch endlessly and the heat shimmers like a mirage, lies one of the desert's most seductive mysteries, the lost city of Zazura. Arab geographers as far back as the 13th century whispered of a white-walled oasis, its gates unguarded, its courtyards filled with untold riches. European explorers, clutching tattered maps adorned with cryptic notes, spent lifetimes chasing its shadow. But was Zazura ever a real place, swallowed by the sands of time, or something far more elusive, a dream woven into the fabric of the desert itself. The legend is intoxicating. Ancient texts describe Zazura as a city of towering palms and cool springs, its buildings gleaming like pearls against the golden dunes. Some accounts claim it was guarded by sleeping giants, others that its treasures could only be found by those pure of heart. The name itself seems to hum with mystery. Zazura, derived from the Arabic word for whispering, as if the desert itself holds the secret. But what makes this tale so compelling isn't just its poetry, it's the way it blurs the line between fact and fable. Enter Laszlo Almasi, the real-life adventurer who would later inspire the enigmatic character in The English Patient. In the 1930s, Almasi led expeditions across the Libyan desert, poring over medieval maps and Bedouin oral traditions in his quest for Zazura. He wasn't just chasing gold, he was chasing a story, one that had bewitched travelers for centuries. Almasi's own writings reveal a man torn between logic and longing. He documented dry riverbeds and fossilized lakes, evidence that the Sahara hadn't always been a wasteland. Could Zazura have been one of the last holdouts of a greener age, a refuge that eventually succumbed to the encroaching dunes? Then there's the tantalizing theory that Zazura wasn't a single city at all, but a shifting concept, a symbol of the life-giving oases that dot the desert, each one a temporary paradise in an unforgiving landscape. The Sahara is littered with ruins of settlements that flourished when the climate was kinder, their walls now half buried by sand. Places like the Garamantian cities of southern Libya, once thriving hubs of trade, now forgotten by all but archaeologists. Could Zazura be a composite of these lost worlds, a collective memory of what the desert once was? Yet the most intriguing clue might lie in the stars. Some Bedouin legends place Zazura not just anywhere in the desert, but beneath the constellation of Orion, as if its gates could only be found by celestial navigation. It's a poetic idea that a city of such allure would be tied to the heavens, forever just out of reach. Modern satellite imagery has revealed ancient river systems beneath the Sahara, hinting at landscapes that could have supported such a place. But Zazura, if it ever existed, remains stubbornly hidden, a ghost in the dunes. Perhaps that's the point. Zazura's power isn't in its discovery, but in the search itself. Like all great lost cities, it's a mirror for our own desires for adventure, for hidden truths, for the thrill of the unknown. Every explorer who ever set foot in the Sahara, map in hand, was chasing more than just a place. They were chasing the idea that somewhere beyond the next dune, the impossible might just be waiting. And in that sense, Zazura is as real as the dreams that fuel it, a whisper on the wind, a flicker in the heat, forever beckoning from the heart of the desert. Mayda might be the most frustratingly slippery of all phantom islands, a crescent-shaped enigma that refused to stay put. First appearing on 14th century charts off the coast of Brittany, this mysterious landmass later migrated southwest, popping up near the Azores, then edging toward the Caribbean on Renaissance maps. Its shape was always the same, a perfect curved sliver, like a moon fallen into the sea, but its location shifted with each new cartographer. Some scholars think Mayda began as a misdrawn version of São Miguel in the Azores, its distinctive bay exaggerated into a crescent over generations of copying. Others argue it was pure invention, a placeholder for sailors' rumors of uncharted lands in the stormy North Atlantic. What makes Mayda so fascinating isn't just its persistence, but what it reveals about how errors spread in the age of hand-drawn maps. Picture a medieval monk hunched over a vellum sheet, copying coastlines from a worn Portuguese chart. A smudged island becomes more defined under his quill. A vague coastline sharpens into a dramatic curve. By the time his work reaches the next cartographer, the guesswork hardens into fact. Mayda's journey across the Atlantic on parchment mirrors this game of geographic telephone, each iteration tweaking its position slightly until it became a fixed feature of the maritime imagination. Yet the island's longevity hints at something deeper than sloppy copying. Sailors navigating the North Atlantic's foggy waters often reported land where none existed, a phenomenon now attributed to temperature inversions bending light to create mirages. Could Mayda have been born from these fleeting illusions, its crescent shape reflecting the distorted silhouette of a real island glimpsed through mist? The Azores' volcanic peaks, when viewed from certain angles in certain weather, might explain the consistent curvature, but why did no explorer ever anchor at Mayda's shores despite centuries of searching? The answer might lie in the economics of exploration. In an era when mapmaking was as much art as science, phantom islands like Mayda served a purpose. They filled blank spaces, making charts feel complete and more valuable to patrons funding voyages. A map dotted with mysterious lands promised undiscovered riches, while an empty ocean offered no such allure. Even respected figures like Gerardus Mercator included Mayda in their atlases, not out of gullibility, but because omitting it might have seemed reckless. If 1 in 100 phantom islands turned out to be real, wasn't it worth keeping them all? Mayda's final disappearance from maps in the 19th century marks a turning point, the moment when hydrographic surveys and steam-powered ships erased the last shadows from the Atlantic. But its legacy lingers. The island's slow drift across the charts mirrors our own relationship with the unknown. The way we project our hopes and fears onto blank spaces, then cling to those projections long after the truth should have dispelled them. Mayda wasn't just a mistake, it was a mirror reflecting the stubborn human habit of seeing what we want to see, even in the face of an empty horizon. The Book of Curiosities unfolds like a dream, a shimmering tapestry where geography and wonder collide. Crafted by an unknown Egyptian scholar in the 11th century, this Arabic manuscript doesn't just chart the known world, it weaves together the threads of science, myth, and mercantile knowledge into something extraordinary. Imagine holding a map where trees bear fruit in the shape of human-headed birds, where mountains glow with celestial light, and where distant islands pulse with the unknown. This isn't just cartography, it's a portal into how the medieval Islamic world grappled with the boundaries of knowledge. Take the Wak-Wak tree, one of the book's most mesmerizing entries. Described as growing on an island far to the east, its branches sagged with strange fruit, living creatures with human faces and birds' bodies, their cries echoing like whispered secrets. To modern eyes, this seems pure fantasy, but the scholar who recorded it likely drew from sailors' tales of Southeast Asia's exotic wildlife, perhaps the haunting calls of hornbills or the human-like expressions of primates, distorted through layers of translation and imagination. The Wak-Wak tree wasn't just a whimsical doodle, it was an attempt to explain the unexplainable, to categorize the bizarre wonders reported by travelers at the edges of the world. Then there are the Mountains of the Moon, a shimmering range said to be the source of the Nile. Unlike the Wak-Wak myth, this feature had roots in reality. The Arwenzori Mountains of East Africa, their snow-capped peaks often shrouded in mist. Greek geographers like Ptolemy had speculated about these mountains, but the Book of Curiosities placed them firmly on the map, reflecting the deep trade networks linking the Islamic world to Africa. Here, the manuscript shifts from legend to keen observation, showcasing how Arab scholars synthesized classical knowledge with first-hand accounts from merchants and explorers. But what's truly striking is how the book balances the empirical and the enigmatic. Alongside accurately mapped cities like Cairo and Constantinople, it includes places like the Island of Women, a land where no man could survive, or the Valley of Diamonds, guarded by serpents of impossible size. These weren't just flights of fancy, they were cultural echoes. The Island of Women, for instance, appears in multiple medieval traditions, from Arabic tales to Norse sagas, suggesting a universal human fascination with the unknown, other. The Valley of Diamonds, meanwhile, might have sprung from real gem mining regions in India or Sri Lanka, their dangers exaggerated into myth. The Book of Curiosities also reveals a world in flux. Some of its lost lands weren't mythical at all. They were real places that had faded from memory due to political upheaval or shifting trade routes. The once great port of Surat, a hub of Indian Ocean commerce, appears vibrant in the manuscript, though it would soon decline after earthquakes and silted harbors erased its prominence. In this way, the book becomes a time capsule, preserving snapshots of cities and cultures on the brink of vanishing. What makes this manuscript so compelling isn't just its content, but its perspective. While European maps of the same era often framed the world through religion or conquest, the Book of Curiosities reflects the Islamic Golden Age's spirit of inquiry, a blend of astronomy, botany, and storytelling. It doesn't dismiss the fantastical, it seeks to understand it, to place it within a broader cosmology. In doing so, it reminds us that every map is more than a guide. It's a conversation between what we know, what we fear, and what we dare to imagine. And sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't the lands we've lost, but the stories we've used to find them. Mu emerges from the shadows of history like a whispered secret, a lost Pacific civilization said to have vanished beneath the waves long before Atlantis ever captivated the Western imagination. The story begins in the late 1800s with Augustus Le Plongeon, a flamboyant antiquarian who claimed to have deciphered ancient Mayan texts in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. According to Le Plongeon, these carvings told of a sophisticated island empire called Mu, a land of towering temples and advanced technology that sank into the ocean following a cataclysmic disaster. His theories, though dismissed by mainstream archaeologists, sparked a firestorm of speculation that still smolders today. What makes Mu so intriguing isn't just its dramatic downfall. It's the way the legend bends and shifts across cultures. While Le Plongeon framed it as a precursor to Atlantis, later writers like James Churchward expanded the myth, describing Mu as the motherland of all human civilization, a paradise stretching from Hawaii to Easter Island. Churchward's books, filled with vivid accounts of crystal-powered cities and telepathic priests, leaned heavily into occultism, blurring the line between archaeology and fantasy. Yet buried beneath the sensationalism lies a tantalizing question. Could Mu be a distorted echo of real geological events? Enter Sunderland, a vast stretch of Southeast Asia's continental shelf that was above water during the last ice age. As glaciers melted and seas rose around 8,000 years ago, this fertile landmass, possibly home to early human settlements, was gradually swallowed by the ocean. Modern sonar mapping reveals river valleys and hills beneath the Java and South China Seas, landscapes that would have been familiar to ancient hunter-gatherers. Could oral traditions of a drowned homeland have survived for millennia, morphing into the Mu legend? The parallels are striking, especially when you consider how flood myths appear in nearly every Pacific culture, from the Aboriginal Dreamtime to Polynesian navigational chants. But Mu's allure isn't just about sunken landmasses, it's about the Pacific itself, a region peppered with enigmatic ruins that defy easy explanation. Take Nan Madol in Micronesia, a city of coral basalt built atop a lagoon, or the Moai of Easter Island, their backs turned to the sea as if guarding forgotten secrets. These sites don't prove Mu existed, but they hint at a maritime network far older and more interconnected than we once assumed. Even the name Mu might hold clues. In the 19th century, scholars misread a Mayan glyph as the letter M, but some linguists suggest it could trace back to Proto-Austronesian words for mother or origin, echoing ancestral memories of dispersal across rising waters. The debate over Mu mirrors the same tensions we've seen with Atlantis or Lemuria, science versus myth, evidence versus intuition. Mainstream historians dismiss it as pure invention, a colonial-era fantasy projecting Western desires onto indigenous cultures. Yet the Pacific's oral traditions are rich with references to lands that slipped beneath the waves, from Hawaii in Maori lore to Babeldaob in Palawan legends. These stories aren't literal maps, but they might encode real events, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, or the slow encroachment of tides that reshaped coastlines over generations. Perhaps Mu's greatest legacy is the way it forces us to confront how little we truly know about the ancient Pacific. Unlike the Mediterranean or the Andes, this vast ocean leaves few unburied ruins to study, just whispers in the waves and stones half drowned by time. Whether Mu was a place, a metaphor, or a mirage, it reminds us that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to keep us searching, diving deeper into the unknown with each passing tide. Wise rises from Breton folklore like a half-remembered dream, a glittering city of spires and sin, swallowed by the sea in a single night of divine retribution. According to legend, King Gradlon built Wise as a gift for his daughter Dahat, surrounding it with towering walls and a single bronze gate whose key he kept around his neck. But Dahat's reckless hedonism, her midnight revels, her lovers drowned at dawn, angered the saints, until one stormy evening, either God or the devil himself tricked her into stealing her father's key. The gates burst open and the ocean rushed in, leaving only the king to escape on his magical horse as the waves closed over his daughter's doomed kingdom. What's fascinating isn't just the tale, but how stubbornly it clings to geography. Medieval Portolan charts sometimes mark is the Breton name for Wise, just beyond the Bay of Douarnenez, its location shifting slightly with each telling. Fishermen in the area still whisper of church bells heard beneath the waves during storms, a haunting echo of the drowned city's cathedral. Could this be pure folklore, or does Wise preserve a memory of real catastrophe? The geology of Brittany offers clues. Around 5,000 years ago, rising post-Ice Age seas transformed this coastline, flooding valleys and forcing settlements inland. The Bay of Douarnenez itself sits atop a submerged river system, its contours matching descriptions of Wise's harbor. Even more compelling are the parallels with Doggerland, the North Sea landmass swallowed by rising waters around the same time. Oral traditions from coastal cultures worldwide, from the Welsh Cantrair Gwaelod to indigenous Australian flood myths, often encode ancestral memories of such events. Wise might be Brittany's version, a moral fable stitched around the trauma of displacement. Yet the legend's power lies in its duality. Unlike Atlantis, which Plato framed as a philosophical allegory, Wise feels intensely local, rooted in the rhythms of Breton life. The city's name echoes in place names like Isle de Seine, where Gradlon supposedly fled, and in the annual Fête de la Mer, where villagers parade an effigy of Dahat to the water's edge. This isn't just a warning about hubris, it's a conversation between land and sea, sin and salvation, playing out in the very landscape that birthed the story. Modern archaeology adds another layer. Off the Breton coast, divers have found Neolithic standing stones and tools beneath the waves, proof that people lived where the sea now rules. But Wise's most tantalizing artifact might be the Groke of the island, a Breton folktale about a sorceress who lures sailors to a sunken palace. The details: a bronze door, treasures guarded by the tide, mirror wise so closely that scholars wonder if both stories recall the same ancient upheaval. Wise endures because it's more than a sunken city. It's a mirror held up to humanity's oldest fears, the fragility of our creations, the cost of our excesses, and the sea's hunger for the land we call home. Every version of the tale, whether told by medieval monks or whispered in Breton pubs, asks the same unsettling question: what happens when the water comes for us? And in that question lingers the chilling possibility that Wise wasn't just a lesson from the past, but a prophecy. Doggerland wasn't just a land bridge, it was a thriving world, a lost continent in all but name. Picture rolling hills, dense forests, and winding rivers teeming with fish, home to Mesolithic hunters who tracked deer through valleys that now lie 60 feet beneath the North Sea. This wasn't some fleeting connection between Britain and Europe. It was a heartland, a place where families lived, loved, and left behind traces we're only now beginning to uncover. Fishermen dredging up mammoth bones and flint tools in their nets were the first to hint at its existence, but modern science has revealed the full scope of this vanished realm. Sonar mapping paints a hauntingly detailed picture: submerged riverbeds, ancient coastlines, even the footprints of a child pressed into mud millennia ago, preserved by the very waters that erased their home. What makes Doggerland so extraordinary is how abruptly its story ended. Around 6200 BCE, a cataclysm struck not a mythical god's wrath, but a geological event known as the Storegga Slide. An underwater landslide off Norway's coast triggered a tsunami with waves as high as 40 feet, crashing into Doggerland's low-lying plains. For the people living there, it would have been unimaginable. A wall of water swallowing hunting grounds, drowning sacred sites, and forcing survivors to flee toward higher ground, the future coasts of England, Denmark, and the Netherlands. But the tsunami was just the beginning. Rising sea levels fueled by melting glaciers completed the drowning over centuries, turning a fertile paradise into a seabed. Archaeologists call Doggerland Europe's Atlantis, but the comparison sells it short. Unlike Plato's allegory, this was a real civilization, or rather, a network of cultures that left behind tangible clues. A harpoon carved from antler, a canoe hollowed from oak, the bones of aurochs butchered for feasts. These aren't myths. They're fragments of a world that knew no borders, where migration was as simple as following a river rather than crossing a channel. The DNA of modern Europeans still carries echoes of Doggerland's people, proving their legacy outlasted the flood. Yet Doggerland's greatest lesson isn't about the past, it's about the future. Its fate mirrors the threats facing coastal communities today, from the Pacific Islands to Louisiana's bayous. The same forces that submerged this ancient land, rising seas, violent storms, are now reshaping our own world. When we study Doggerland, we're not just peering into a drowned landscape, we're holding up a mirror to our own vulnerability. The difference is, we have the tools to see the crisis coming. The question is, will we heed the warning? Could other Doggerlands lie hidden beneath the waves? Almost certainly. The Persian Gulf was once a lush valley watered by the Tigris and Euphrates before the ocean claimed it around 8,000 years ago, potentially inspiring Sumerian flood myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh. Off Australia's northwest coast, sonar reveals the outlines of an ancient inland sea, now submerged, that indigenous oral traditions call the Dreamtime Sea. These aren't just geological curiosities, they're lost chapters of human history waiting for their stories to be told. Doggerland forces us to confront a humbling truth: the maps we trust today are temporary. Coastlines shift, empires drown, and the sea always takes back what it lends. The only difference between legend and history is how long we wait to start listening. The Marshall Islands stick charts are more than maps, they're living poems of the sea. woven from palm ribs and cowrie shells. Imagine holding one in your hands, tracing the delicate latticework that doesn't depict landmasses as we know them, but something far more subtle: the pulse of ocean swells, the secret pathways between islands, the invisible currents that guided voyagers across thousands of miles of open Pacific. These weren't just tools for navigation. They were mnemonic devices, physical repositories of knowledge passed down through generations of master navigators who could read the ocean's language like a book. What's haunting is how many of the islands marked on these charts no longer exist. Rising seas, accelerated by modern climate change, have erased some atolls completely, turning them into names without places. The charts, once practical guides, are now archives of a vanishing world, proof that oral and tactile traditions often hold memories of landscapes long since swallowed by the tides. Take the story of Baikeman, a tiny islet near Majuro, once vital as a storm refuge. It appears on stick charts as a shell tied with fiber, but today it's just a shoal beneath the waves, its existence preserved only in the knots and curves of these fragile artifacts. The brilliance of stick charts lies in their abstraction. Unlike Western maps that fix locations in rigid grids, they capture the ocean's dynamism, the way currents shift, how waves refract around islands, even the flight patterns of birds that betray unseen land over the horizon. A shell might represent an island, but the sticks between them, those could mean the push of a tide or the pull of a star path. This isn't cartography as we understand it. It's a dance of relationships, a reminder that to navigate is to converse with the elements. Could other cultures have forged similar systems we've yet to recognize? Consider the Inuit in the Arctic, who carved coastal contours into driftwood to track icy shorelines, or the Aboriginal songlines of Australia, a network of oral maps where melodies encode topography, turning the land itself into a navigable score. These traditions challenge our assumptions about what a map can be. They don't just record space, they encode time, memory, and the intimate knowledge of those who listen to the Earth's whispers. The stick charts also force us to confront a painful irony. Just as Western science begins to appreciate indigenous knowledge studying these charts to understand wave patterns or climate resilience, the very landscapes they describe are disappearing. It's as if we're decoding a message from the past just as the future it warned about arrives, yet perhaps that's their greatest lesson. In a world where rising waters threaten to redraw coastlines once more, these fragile lattices of wood and shell remind us that survival has always depended on reading the signs, not just on paper, but in the swell of the sea and the stories we tell about the places we've lost. The next time you look at a modern map with its crisp lines and satellite precision, remember, some truths can't be pinned to coordinates. They live in the hands that weave sticks, the voices that sing shorelines, and the memories of lands that exist now only in the echoes between waves. The stick charts aren't relics, they're invitations to listen, to adapt, and to navigate the unseen before it slips beneath the surface forever. Google Earth has turned us all into armchair explorers, peeling back layers of time with the swipe of a finger. What ancient cartographers could only dream of depicting lost cities, submerged kingdoms, landscapes swallowed by sand or sea, we can now glimpse from orbit. Take those controversial sonar images off Cuba's coast, where geometric shapes loom a half-mile underwater. Some claim they're the ruins of a megalithic city, their angular lines too precise for nature. Skeptics argue they're odd rock formations, yet even they can't deny the eerie resemblance to stepped pyramids like those in Mesopotamia or Mesoamerica. Whether natural or man-made, these structures force us to ask, could entire chapters of human history be hiding beneath the waves, waiting for technology to reveal them? The Sahara, too, guards secrets beneath its dunes. Satellite radar has exposed the skeletons of ancient river systems, vast waterways that once turned this desert into a lush savanna. One such buried channel, the Tamanrasset, may have rivaled the Nile in size, its waters feeding vanished civilizations like the Garamontes, who built underground tunnels to farm the arid land. These discoveries rewrite the narrative of human migration, suggesting that green corridors crisscrossed the desert long after we assumed it had dried up. It's as if we're watching old maps come to life, not as fanciful illustrations, but as scientific fact. Then there's Dwarka, the legendary sunken city off India's coast. Hindu texts describe it as Krishna's golden capital, swallowed by the sea when he departed Earth. For centuries, it was dismissed as myth until marine archaeologists found stone anchors, pottery, and submerged walls matching the descriptions. Satellite thermal imaging even revealed a grid-like pattern beneath the seabed, hinting at urban planning. The line between legend and history blurs here, proving that sometimes the stories our ancestors told were maps in disguise. But technology's greatest gift might be its ability to resurrect landscapes we never knew existed. LiDAR scans over Central America have uncovered sprawling Mayan metropolises hidden under jungle canopies, their pyramids and roads invisible to the naked eye. In Cambodia, the same technology exposed Mahendraparvata, a lost Khmer city predating Angkor Wat by centuries. These aren't just rediscoveries, they're resurrections, pulling entire cities from the shadows of time. Yet for all our advancements, some mysteries resist even satellite eyes. The Baltic Sea anomaly, a bizarre, disc-shaped structure spotted on sonar, still defies explanation. Is it a glacial deposit, a forgotten Nazi device, or something else entirely? And what of the Yonaguni Monument off Japan, a terraced underwater formation so perfectly angular that its origins remain hotly debated? These enigmas remind us that for every lost land we uncover, others slip just beyond our grasp, teasing us with questions we can't yet answer. Perhaps the most profound shift isn't in the tech itself, but in how it's democratizing discovery. Centuries ago, mapmakers guarded their knowledge like state secrets. Today, anyone with an internet connection can scour the globe for anomalies, turning millions into potential explorers. Citizen scientists have flagged everything from potential archaeological sites in Peru to strange Antarctic features that might be natural or might not. This collective curiosity is stitching together a new kind of map, one woven from data, dreams, and the stubborn human urge to look beyond the horizon. We're not just finding lost lands anymore, we're learning how to listen to them, to read the whispers of sediment and sonar, to decode the stories hidden in coral and sandstone. Every pixel on a satellite image could be a doorway, every shadow a clue. The age of exploration isn't over, it's just beginning again, this time with tools that let us see through time itself. And who knows, the next great discovery might not come from a team of experts, but from someone scrolling in their living room, eyes wide with wonder at the ghosts rising from the digital deep. Climate change isn't just altering our future, it's erasing it. The Maldives, a necklace of islands in the Indian Ocean, hovers just 3 feet above sea level on average. Venice, the floating city of canals and palaces, sinks a little deeper each year as waters rise and foundations crumble. These aren't hypothetical scenarios, they're unfolding realities, places poised to join the ranks of Atlantis and Lioness as legends on future maps. The irony is stark. Ancient cartographers recorded lands lost to natural forces, yet here we are, watching history repeat itself in slow motion, armed with data but seemingly powerless to stop it. Consider Tuvalu, a Polynesian nation of 12,000 people spread across 9 atolls. Its highest point rises a mere 15 feet above the waves. Salt water already seeps into freshwater wells, killing crops and poisoning the land. The government has begun digitally preserving its culture, songs, stories, even the layout of villages, because within decades there may be no physical Tuvalu left to visit. It's a modern-day library of Alexandria, racing against the tide to safeguard what rising waters threaten to take. And Tuvalu isn't alone. From Louisiana's disappearing bayous to the Solomon Islands, where 5 reef islands have already vanished, the map is being redrawn before our eyes. What makes this moment so unsettling is how it mirrors the very stories we've spent centuries unraveling. The same forces that drowned Doggerland or swallowed Zazura rising seas, shifting climates, are now lapping at our doorstep. Ancient maps warned of these risks not through graphs or projections, but through allegory and loss. The Hereford Mapa Mundi placed Gog and Magog at the world's edge, a biblical warning of chaos unleashed. Today, our monsters at the edge aren't mythical tribes. They're hurricanes strengthened by warmer oceans, droughts that turn fertile plains to dust, and storms that erase coastlines in hours. Yet there's a crucial difference. The people of Doggerland had no warning when the Storiga slide sent waves crashing over their homes. The Garamontes of the Sahara didn't know their underground canals would one day run dry. We do. Satellite imagery tracks melting ice sheets in real time. Tide gauges record every incremental rise. The Marshall Islands stick charts, once used to navigate waves, now serve as relics of a world we're losing by the inch. Our ancestors left us maps of what they lost. We're creating maps of what we're about to. The question isn't whether lands will vanish, it's what we'll remember when they do. Will Venice become a cautionary tale like Wise, a city of sin drowned by its own excess? Or will it be another Pompeii, frozen in time by the very forces that destroyed it? Perhaps the most haunting lesson from ancient maps isn't that civilizations fall, but how quickly they fade from memory. The names of Doggerland's rivers, the songs of Tuvalu's islands, the recipes of coastal kitchens, these are the fragile threads that connect us to places once loved, then lost. In the end, the cycle continues. New lands will sink, new maps will be drawn, and new stories will be told about what lies beneath the waves. But this time, we're not just the victims of the tale. We're the authors. The ink isn't dry yet, and the ending, whether it's one of resilience or ruin, is still ours to write. Ancient maps are more than faded ink on parchment. They're mirrors of the human soul, reflecting our deepest fears, wildest dreams, and unquenchable thirst for the unknown. Every line drawn, every phantom island sketched at the edge of the known world, tells a story not just of geography, but of the people who dared to imagine what lay beyond. These lost lands, whether swallowed by the sea or born from legend, aren't merely dots on a forgotten map. They're vessels for our collective imagination, carrying the hopes of explorers, the warnings of storytellers, and the echoes of civilizations that once were or might have been. Think about the threads that bind Atlantis, Doggerland, and Tuvalu together. One is a philosopher's parable, another a drowned homeland, and the third a living nation on the brink of vanishing. Yet all three speak to the same truth. Land is fleeting, empires rise and fall, coastlines shift, and what seems permanent today may be a footnote in tomorrow's atlas. Ancient cartographers understood this instinctively. When they marked terra incognita on their maps, they weren't just admitting ignorance, they were acknowledging that the world is vast, mysterious, and ever-changing. But here's the twist: the most enduring lost lands aren't the ones that disappeared. They're the ones that never existed at all. Places like Hy-Brasil or Friesland, born from mirages and tall tales, outlasted real cities because they tapped into something primal. They became symbols of paradise, of danger, of the eternal human itch to chase horizons. Even when explorers debunked them, these phantom lands refused to fade. They simply morphed, retreating further into myth, always one step ahead of the truth. Now turn the lens forward. What lands will future maps say vanished in our era? The Maldives, Venice, the Louisiana bayous. Climate change isn't just reshaping coastlines. It's writing the next chapter in this ancient story of loss and rediscovery. And just like the cartographers of old, we're left with a choice. Will we document these changes as cold facts, or will we weave them into narratives that future generations will puzzle over, just as we've puzzled over Atlantis and Lioness? Perhaps the greatest lesson of these vanished lands is that maps are never truly about the past. They're about the future. Every explorer who ever unfurled a chart, every sailor who steered by the stars, was betting that the world still held secrets worth finding. That bet still stands. The oceans are deeper, the deserts vaster, and the archives dustier than we can fathom. Who knows what fragments of lost worlds still lie buried in some forgotten manuscript or hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the right pair of eyes or the right satellite to bring them back to light. So keep searching, keep questioning, and the next time you look at a map, remember, the blank spaces aren't empty. They're alive with possibilities, pulsing with the ghosts of lands we've lost and the whispers of those we've yet to find. The mystery never ends, it just changes shape, and somewhere, right now, a new legend is being born. What will yours be? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep the conversation and the exploration going. After all, the next great discovery might start